of the strength blueprint.
All right,
And then
going live.
if you skip to the last page, that's where I'm going to get these numbers from.
Okay.
Let's go live. We're live on the Movement Mastermind. What's up, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a wicked show for you today. Very, very exciting. We're going to be bringing this week's series in for a landing. We're talking about the best way to develop strength and flexibility. Of course, if you missed the first few episodes, we kicked this off on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we had Phil from ADPT Physio talking about his methods of developing strength flexibility. And today, we're going to be sort of somewhat lifting the curtains on the UMS program and talking about the 10 best strength exercises. Throughout this whole series, we've been talking about the fundamental movements, the fundamental movement patterns. And today we're going to talk about what they are and why they are so important. And we're also going to talk about complementary and auxiliary movements that can be used to sort of add to your training as well. Before we do, if this is the first time you've joined us, allow me to introduce us. My name is Yanni Burmeister, and of course, joining me and running the show is Richard the Rig Lellies. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could do what I'm doing right now and smash that like button. Of course, subscribe if you like what you see. I can see we've got a bunch of people watching live over on YouTube. Let us know who you are and where you're tuning in from, and we'll send you back some love. We are live. Hi to Vinnie Brown over in the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. For everybody watching or listening on the podcast, watching on YouTube, if you haven't already, get over and join the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. It is a private group, 5,000 epic people, just like Vinnie, all striving to improve their physical performance, martial artists, CrossFitters, powerlifters, personal trainers, physiotherapists, athletes of all sorts. And over there, you get access to a couple of really cool things. You get our 20-minute flexibility routine, which is a real game changer and how most people get started with us. It's absolutely free. It's complimentary over there. You also get access to our 10-minute warm-ups for the upper and lower body, the exact warm-ups we use in the UMS. And you get a chance to join RAD in our 5-day flexibility challenge. We do one every month. And it is a really transformational workshop. It's pretty cool. It's live. Okay, let's get started. So we've been talking about the fundamental movement patterns all week. We've been talking about how the first 3 UMS program phases are about technique optimization of the fundamental movement patterns. And in UMS, we've taken it a little further. In most sort of personal training circles, there's usually 8 fundamental movement patterns. And they relate to horizontal push-pull. So think bench press, bent over row, vertical push-pull, chin-up, and overhead press. Then they do a squat, which is obviously the barbell back squat when we're training in the gym, and a hip bend, hip hinge, they refer to it, which is the deadlift movement pattern in UMS. So that gives you 6. Then they have a gait movement pattern, which is usually like a lunge. We use a back racked split squat in the UMS. And what's the last one? I think that might be it in most circles, or plyometrics, some people might say. Now, in UMS, we take it a step further. And if you want to bring up, Richie, have you got that sheet that I sent you? This comes directly from one of our program assets. We call this our structural balance blueprint. And of course, it's for our senior guys who get to the point where they start to do their self-assessments and strength tests. And this document accompanies a series of about 15 video lessons. So if you scroll to the last page, and this takes you through all of the science and all of the key principles of strength and conditioning that we use in UMS. Yeah, it might take a couple of seconds to load, unfortunately. It's a big document. On the last page, Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yep.
it's all right. On the last page, we
Okay.
list off the 10 fundamental movement patterns that we test to keep the body in balance, and we list off the supplementary and or what we call auxiliary movements that we use. So we're training both the primary movers, the prime movers, and we're training the stabilizers in the body. And so if we look at those, they are. I'm just going to bring it up in a way that I can see it better. Where are we? There we are. Rock on. So the prime movers in the UMS and there's two benchmark lifts that we use: the barbell bench press, which is the upper body benchmark test, and the barbell back squat, which is the lower body benchmark test. And they give us our sort of benchmark numbers that we compare everything else to test whether we are in a healthy structural balance. And structural balance refers to the opposing muscle systems in the body and the outer unit movement muscles, the muscles that we can see in the mirror, and the inner unit stability muscles. Okay. And so from the upper body barbell bench press, the barbell back squat, we then have the 30-degree incline barbell bench press, the barbell front squat or the front racked barbell squat, the barbell bent over row, the back racked barbell split squat, the seated barbell overhead press, the conventional barbell deadlift, conventional meaning conventional width of the grip and foot position, not a sumo deadlift. And then the final two are the chin up and the seated behind the head press. And that makes the 10 fundamental movement patterns that we use in UMS. And those are the 10 movements that we optimize technique in the first three training modules, training programs. And of course, along the way, we are testing people's ability, So there's often a case where someone needs mobility compromise address before we will allow them to progress to, for instance, a seated behind the head press, because that movement, if you don't have the mobility for it, is not going to be beneficial to you. It will probably be more so a risk. The risk versus reward is not right. Then the auxiliary movements that we test to make sure that the stabilizers are in balance with the prime movers are the dumbbell external rotation from the knee, the dumbbell trap three raise, the flat dumbbell chest press, the kneeling single arm row, and the back racked front step up, which is done with a thigh parallel to the floor. So a step that creates a right angle in the thigh when we're stepping up to it. And those are the movements that we use as a testing, but also for technique optimization. And we're going to talk about why now. Now you can see there we have percentages and ratios that we strive for in UMS with our athletes, and those have been tested by a truckload of different strength and conditioning and sports exercise scientists over the years. The ratios differ slightly depending on which expert you work with and what sport you are doing. To give you an example, a rowing sport like a rowing squad may change the ratio of the chin up and the deadlift in comparison to the squat and the bench press. But this is what works for us. This is what has stood the test of time, and it is very, very successful. Now, let's talk about why these movements are the best strength exercises, and why they've stood the test of time, and why these are arguably used by probably most of the best strength coaches in the world to benchmark strength or to develop strength. Um, the reason is because they are they're a mix of complex movement patterns and also compound movement patterns. And what that means is that you're using multi joints in each of the movements, except for the auxiliary movements. The auxiliary movements in some cases are isolating certain muscle systems, but every other movement there is a multi joint movement where getting a variety of bilateral and unilateral movements, meaning some of the exercises are using both extremities at the same time, moving the same weight, whereas other movements a perfect example is the split squat or the step up is a single leg exercise. So we start to get that unilateral. There's a balance element. There's an anti-stability element. Upregulates core activation, all that sort of thing. We use a mix of dumbbells and barbells. The dumbbells create a unilateral stimulus because each limb has its own weight to push. The strong side can't help the weak side. All of that sort of stuff is sort of taken care of, and these movements have, they've been used in strength development by coaches quite literally for hundreds of years, and they have stood the test of time because they're the best. You'll notice there that there is not one assisted exercise, and you'll also, some people might argue, where are the bicep curls and where are the hamstring curls and things like that. Uh, the reason that we consider those exercises supplementary or complementary exercises, and they're still great. Richard and I still
Yep.
use bicep curls all the time, but they're not. We don't use them as fundamental movement patterns because they're not skill based. They're not sort of as big bang for your buck, but they're really really nice to complement or supplement your workout with. Richie, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And they're also like a big part of why they're fundamental movements is they're all very functional movements. They're movements that biomechanically we do in real life, and but they're not also overcomplicated either. Some people ask, where's the clean and jerk? Like that's going to be, or where's the clean? Where's the Olympic lifts? They're really important movements for weightlifters. But when it comes to general strength, base level strength, a foundation level strength, it's been assessed and analyzed over the years, like you said, by a lot of strength coaches, a lot of strength scientists, that it's these basic movements: up, down, forward, back, through the shoulders, as well as squat, hip hinge, that give people the ability, the base level of strength, to excel at those more advanced movements as well. So again, yeah, fundamental because they are functional.
Yep. I'll go even deeper. It's a
Yep.
great point that you brought up there about the Olympic lifts, and I'll go even deeper as to why we don't include them in our program, in our strength assessments, because the risk versus reward profile for most people is not good.
Yep.
I like to say Olympic lifts find the individual doesn't find Olympic lifts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by that, I mean, if you have even the slightest compromise in posture, in mobility, in strength, and you don't have an exceptional coach working with you, it will be very risky to practice Olympic lifts like the snatch or the clean and jerk.
Yep.
If you're an athlete, if you're a professional athlete, I think it's a staple part of your program. If you're in a strength sport, especially, or a speed strength sport,
Yep.
especially, then I think it'd be crazy not to include them. But professional athletes, let's be frank, have professional coaches working with them to teach them how to do those movements.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that it's not important to get to get a coach's eye on you in the movements that we've just used as examples, but the risk versus reward is the profile is far better. A deadlift is a portion of a clean and jerk. It's the pull from the floor, and so you can still get a lot of the benefits. And if you put all of those exercises together into a great program, you can get all of the benefits still of Olympic lifting, with exception to maximal speed strength development. It would be hard to argue that you're going to optimize an athlete's speed strength, the ability to produce velocity, in comparison to how you could develop it with Olympic lifts.
Yep.
But most people don't need that we come across. Most people don't need that, and if they do, then we'd certainly suggest that they include that in their training if their body is capable of doing it, because I've seen so many people blow up a good body, a
Mm.
healthy body, but being absent of illness or injury. That's the true meaning of health: absent of illness or injury. I've seen a lot of people blow up a body that was absent of illness or injury by attempting to do Olympic lifts when they're not capable of doing them. And
Yeah.
so we just don't include them in our strength test or program for that very reason. Most people can get exactly what they need and more without using them.
Yeah.
And I believe that ollie lifting has become, it was really popularized with CrossFit,
Mm.
and I think CrossFit really fucked it up with that. They
Yeah. That's fair enough.
they put a whole heap of people that were unqualified to do that in
Yeah.
a room to do it, and I don't think the reward is there. Like, why? None of these people need to develop incredible levels of speed strength. Most of them just want to look good and be functional, and
Mm.
I just don't think the risk versus reward profile is right there.
Yeah.
You have to
Without
take that into consideration.
yeah. Without getting into too much of CrossFit bashing, because you and I, Yanni, share the same opinion about CrossFit. We both respect the sport and everything, but yeah, like when it
I
comes to
love it.
like,
I love
yeah,
watching CrossFit. It's
yeah,
awesome. And
when it
if I
comes
was
to
10 or 20 years younger, I'd probably have a crack again. We've both had our experience when Richard was in the military and initially training with Rad. At that stage in our life, this is going back more than 10 years ago, we were all training in that fashion. And it's great. It's great when you've got a young, resilient body. But like any sport that's really highly demanding, I also used to play rugby league. I don't play rugby league anymore. I'm in my 40s, and my body is just a bit beat up,
yeah,
and that's what I also boxed for 16 years. I don't box anymore. I don't get punched in the head every weekend anymore, because those sorts of things you do when you're young, and yeah, you tend to have to. I mean, my workouts nowadays are about getting through the workout without injuring myself, because of all that crap I did in the
yeah,
past. I've completely ripped the front portion of my cartilage labrum off my shoulder
yeah,
doing crazy stuff, and now every time I go to the gym and train, it's a matter of like making sure that I don't aggravate that shoulder. I've had a knee reconstruction from footy that, I had my knee dislocated. Like, all these sports, all these injuries take a toll, and CrossFit's no different. So let me be absolutely clear: we're not beating up on CrossFit, but
yeah.
I will blatantly say that I think that the majority of people that are doing ollie lifting in boxes, it's great fun, and it gets you going, and the development, the physical development that comes from it is amazing, but it's risky. And if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a great coach, it's even more risky, and if your body is not, if your shoulders aren't open properly, if your coordination isn't there, if you haven't done the foundational work, if you haven't built up some resilience and
Yeah.
tolerance to it, then it's even more risky.
I think the far majority of people will get a lot more benefit out of like a simpler movement like a squat, or sorry, maximizing and optimizing, sorry, the technique that they do for a squat or a deadlift than what they would by jumping into a clean and jerk, a snatched way too early. It's yeah, it's crazy. But that being said, there's still a lot of benefit to it. But like when it comes to like foundation movements, fundamental movements, I think like the Olympic lifting comes after you have mastered the basics of the squat pattern, the
Yep.
deadlift pattern. Yep.
Yep. That's what I would say. That's I think not many people would argue with that. That if you were starting out, the priority, and this is still the priority for us, and how we would do it, we wouldn't introduce ollie lifting until you'd done at least 12 weeks of a general preparations phase, which we call our technique optimization phase, which is when we're focusing on what we just showed you there. There's 10 fundamental movement patterns, which are the big bang for your buck exercises. And then there's five, some people call them remedial, we call them auxiliary exercises, which really are there to train the stabilizers that work intrinsically with the big prime movers,
Yep.
so that you're not creating a structural balance imbalance, a structural imbalance, I should say. Excuse
Yep.
me. And once you've dialed all that in, and optimize the technique in those movements, you are also going to have leveled up your strength. And a beginner level person, an untrained person, can expect up to 30% strength improvement over those 3 program phases, over those first 12 weeks, because you get a rapid adaptation response in the beginning. And of course, you get diminishing returns as you become more trained. And anyone who has been training for a decade will understand this. It's far harder to get results now because your body is just so resilient and receptive to the exercise that you kind of feel good when you get a bit of DOMS afterwards. You're like, oh my god, I've actually I'm actually getting a bit of a response. I've so yeah, look, that's what I would argue for anyone. Focus on optimizing technique in the fundamental movements, create
Yep.
anatomical structural balance between the prime movers in opposing joints. So the most obvious example of this is like chest and back, or biceps and triceps, or quads and hammies, things like that. Create structural balance in those prime movers, agonist versus antagonist muscle systems. Create structural balance in the prime movers and the stabilizers, the deeper stabilizers. So, for example, the push pulling movement pattern and the internal and external rotation in the shoulders, or the squat and bend and the hip stabilizers, the glutes. So create structural balance there, and then create structural balance in symmetry, in limb symmetry, left to right side, by starting out using a higher emphasis on unilateral movements rather than bilateral movements. Good examples of that are dumbbell presses instead of bench presses and things like that. And then we also like to say, and this is quite unique to UMS, create balance in attributes, physical attributes, strength, flexibility, fitness, because you can't optimize performance if you don't work on all 3 of those. We've had some of our closest friends and colleagues become very unhealthy when they get very strong without developing flexibility and fitness, cardiovascular fitness. And we've seen incredible yogis join us who have immense levels of flexibility but poor strength and fitness, who I still
Mm.
wouldn't classify as healthy. Athletes. And when we develop those other 2 attributes, all of a sudden they start to really optimize their performance, and they're sort of scratching their head going, wow, I've been working on yoga for 22 years and I've never been able to do that movement. And I do your program for 2 months and I can do it. Why? Because you weren't fit and strong.
Yeah.
My friend Ben Pokolsky, BPAC, made a really, really strong argument when I trained with him a couple of years ago as to why fitness is so important. Because we went to do a leg workout, and his damn warm up was 100 reps on the barbell back squat at body weight. So put your body weight on a barbell and do 100 reps nonstop. And I couldn't even get them out because of my cardio fitness. I
Yeah.
was just like gasping for air, and I was doing blocks of 10 and then having to rest. And he's like, man, you're so unfit. And I was like, I've never had to squat this much before. And he goes, this is why I work on fitness with my guys so much at the start, because they can't even survive my damn workout, my muscular hypertrophy workout, just the sheer amount of volume that some of those Olympia bodybuilders do. You need a high level of fitness to be able to handle that. You need the lactate buffering. And
Oh,
so you really don't unleash your inner athlete until you've worked on all 3 of those attributes. Anyway,
there you go.
we've got to wrap this up. Good discussion. I at least enjoyed it. Kumaran's made a great point there. Morning Ollie lifts are amazing, but they have a huge skill component. Yep, agreed. Kumaran's an ex-member of Unity Gym. And we're going to jump in and give our daily coaching to the guys in our UMS coaching group. So we will see you all tomorrow, right, for Friday's wrap-up.
You guys.